On March 23rd, one of my friends, Wendy McIntyre, was arrested for alleged kidnapping. Wendy tried to help a young man who was being subjected to abuse daily at a group home in the high desert. She was trying to help him to be placed in a safer environment, and she is an advocate for people who are at risk of harm. She's the type of person that'll put her body in front of anyone to protect them from, especially a juvenile, which this young man was. Okay, so after they arrested her, after being arrested and handcuffed, Wendy, who's 5'10", was placed into the back of a patrol car and transported to Twin Peaks Sheriff's Station. She lived close by. She was not seat belted in, and she said the officers intentionally drove very fast, very crazy, and she was being tossed from side to side. But that wasn't the worst of it. From the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department, she was again transported up to Apple Valley Police Department. She was handcuffed in the back seat. And if you go down Highway 138 towards Silverwood, you know there's a lot of curves. She said they were driving so fast, and she was being tossed all over that back seat. And she had no seatbelt on again. And by the time she arrived to the Apple Valley Sheriff's Department, her hands and wrists were bleeding from the being tossed around against sharp edges in the back seat. Then she was transported from Apple Valley to the Adelanto Detention Facility. She had to ask her officer to seatbelt her in this time, and so she was that time on the way to the Adelanto Detention Center. From the Adelanto Detention Center, she was then placed again in a patrol car, but she was placed in shackles this time and handcuffed, and she was seat belted in, but there was another woman in the car weighing about 300 pounds that did not have a seatbelt on. And that sheriff deputy, she said, drove so fast that the two ladies were saying, "We're gonna die." They thought they were gonna die. So I'm not sure how fast they were going, but you know, the 300-pound woman had no seatbelt on, so she was all over the place in that back seat. Very scary ride to the West Valley Detention Center. When he arrived at the West Valley Detention Center, she said she was placed in a cell where it was all women, but the toilet was overflowing. There was blood and feces all over the floors and the walls because they don't give Kotexes to the prisoners. Toilet paper obviously didn't fix the toilets. The toilet paper and the Kotexes were on the other side of the glass, kind of taunting the prisoners. She is on prescribed medication. She said they didn't care. They didn't care about anybody's medication. A lot of people were withdrawing from their prescribed medication while in the cell. She said the officers would ignore their calls for help. If they'd press the button, they wouldn't come for, 45 minutes or if all. One of the prisoners there was an Asian woman, and she was taunted. She wanted to have a pencil. She requested a pencil, and the officer refused to give it to her and said "ching chong" to racially taunt her. So I wanted to share that with you. I've met many people in this county who have had experiences with the Sheriff's Department. One really scary one, a mother, disabled. Her daughter was in jail, and a deputy was extorting her for sex. Said, "If you don't do it with me, I'm going to do it to your daughter." That was one of my victims that I helped. There's also a man up in the high desert, Brett Gaddis. He was shot on January 7th by one of his neighbors. His neighbor's not been arrested. The case has been over at the district attorney's office for probably a month or two now. No charges. This man's not been arrested, and it's just a very scary situation up there. So I'm just basically here to say, and there's a lot more incidents than that. There was Alan Kephart, who was tased 26 times up in the high mountains. He was had failed to stop at a stop sign, and he went to the Arco station. I'm sure it's his father's and the sheriff's reserves to go to a public place. Well, at that public place, that's where he died from the tasing, that the officers did to him. So there was a community meeting. People there expressed fear of their sheriff's department. And this is not all. I'm just providing those few examples. And I just am here to say it's time for a change. We need change with the leadership at the top. We do not want any more appointed sheriffs. We need free and fair elections. And that's what we're here about today.
Yes.
And thank you for your time.